Okay, welcome to this channel once again. I want to teach today on EHS202, Introduction to Ecology and Environmental Science. So this is a course for 200 level students of the National Open University of Nigeria. Okay, a very interesting course, Ecology and Environmental Science. We'll be looking at three units: Basics of Ecology, Unit 2, Ecological Succession, then Unit 3, Relationship and Interdependence of Organisms. Okay, so Unit 1, Basics of Ecology, what are we learning here? We're to learn how to define the term ecology, then the characteristics and importance of ecology. Okay, so basics of ecology. Ecology is the scientific study of the interrelationships of living organisms, plants, animals, microbes with each other and with their physical environment. All right, so it's very rare, all right, for you to see an organism in isolation, all right, even though you might not see what the organism is interacting with your physical eyes or naked eyes, right? A lot of things are happening, especially when you bring in maybe a microscope. You will not see that, okay, in a pool of water or a pond, right? You may have, several algae, right? Several fungi, several bacteria, living organisms in that pond, okay? You have earthworms, you have all manner of living and non-living things, all right, interacting in a small pond. So ecology basically is the study of the ecosystem, the interactions, all right, among different organisms in the space. So it mainly concerns with the directive uh, influence of influences of abiotic and biotic environmental factors over the growth, distribution, behavior, and survival of uh, organisms. So, in other words, ecology is a science which investigates organisms in relation to their environment, and the philosophy in which the world of life is interpreted in terms of natural processes. I remember I read recently of one particular tribe that they've adapted to living underwater, all right, and so they can stay longer on underwater than the average human beings, all right, because over thousands of years since they live in the marine areas, they've been able to adapt to life underwater. Okay, so living things are always relating with their immediate natural environment. The term environment, which etymologically means surroundings, is considered as a composite term for the conditions in which the organisms live and thus consist of air, the water, food, sunlight, which are the basic needs of all living things, all right, and plant life to carry on their life functions. Okay, so when we are talking about environment, we're talking about availability of air, availability of water, availability of food, availability of sunlight. Okay, so the environment also includes other living things like temperature. All right, it matters. All right, it matters a lot. So you look at temperature, maybe average temperature in Nigeria compared with average temperature in the Arctic region. All right, wind, okay, electricity, all right, all these are also components of the environment. So in other words, environment consists of both biotic and abiotic substances. Environment creates favorable conditions for the existence and development of living organisms. So the term organism refers to an individual unit constituted to carry on the activities of life. Okay, it's a dynamic biological unit which is greatly influenced by enveloping and fluctuation, all right, fluctuating environment. All right, for a given organism, the environment includes all the surrounding physical and biological factors with which it interacts. Um, so, like for example, human beings, all right. So, as a living human being, all right, why do people have the diseases, all right? They get exposed to the wrong, you know, microbes, or somebody goes to an area where there is, the air is polluted, all right, for example, or the water is polluted, all right, maybe for example, maybe in a rural area or a city where the water, right, all manner of waste is being dumped into the water, and now same water is also what people are using for drinking, for cooking, and things like that. So you see, human beings get interact with the environment, and the environment also interact with them also. Okay, so for a given organism, the environment includes all the surrounding physical and biological factors with which it interacts. The factor is any external force, substance, or condition that affect organisms in any way. All right, like I've said. So where you are, for example, if you are in an arid region, all right, you are exposed to extreme sunlight, and that can cause heat stroke. All right, but somebody that is all right, maybe in a temperate region may not have to bother about that. All right, there are some environments that are very windy. All right, so they're exposed to a lot, high level winds, or for some seasons in the year. All right, some areas, some people live in mountainous area, and of course, you know that the higher you go on a mountain, the less the oxygen. All right. So we be depending on where you are as a living being, you are interacting either consciously or unconsciously with your immediate environment. Okay, so levels of organization. Ecologists study nature on different levels from a local perspective to a global scale. These levels reveal the complex relationships found in nature. All right. So, for example, organism, that is like a unit. All right. An organism is an individual living thing, such as an alligator, a crocodile, a sheep, a goat. Okay. Then, from organism, we can have population, right? So, population now is a group of the same species that lives in one area. All right. So, all the alligators in a particular area, maybe in the swamp, for example, all the sharks in a particular ocean. That's a population. Then we have community. Community is a group of different species that live together in one area, such as, all right, so in one particular, maybe in the forest, all right, or in a swampy area. That swampy area, you have alligators there, you have turtles there, you have birds, you have fish, you have plants. Now, so like what they have in Florida Everglades. Okay, so that's a community, different species, all right, living together. But if it is population, you are looking at a group of the same species. Please note the difference. Population is a group of the same species, all right, either plant or animal. Then community is a group of multiple species, all right, living together. Okay, I believe that is very clear. So then we have ecosystem. An ecosystem includes all of the organism as well as a climate. So when you're looking at ecosystem, it's not just the organism, the living organisms now. You're also looking at, all right, the other factors, all right, like climate, the soil, the water, rocks, and other non-living things in the given area. So it's a system. So a system consists of subsystems. So ecosystems can vary in size. An entire ecosystem may live within a decaying log. So if you pick a log that is decaying, you'll be very surprised how many organisms, living and non-living, are there. All right. So which in turn may be part of a larger wetland ecosystem. Then you have biome. A biome is a major regional or global community of organisms. Biomes are usually characterized by the climate conditions and plant communities that thrive there. Okay, psychologists study relationships within each level of organization and also between levels. For example, researchers may study relationship within a population of alligators. So alligators, how do they treat themselves? All right, how do they relate with one another? All right. And you may also want to study the relationship between alligators and turtles. All right. What kind of relationship? All right. Is it, do they feed on one another? Do they tolerate one another? So you may want to look at that. You may want to look at all right, look at predators. Okay, so you have lions. Lions are predators. All right. Then you have maybe jackals or leopards. How do they relate, all right, if they are found together, all right, in a particular area? So that can also be studied. How lions relate within themselves, all right. For example, now it has been proven that lions, they do fight, okay, for territorial dominance, all right. So and when a particular lion takes over um, the leadership, all right, of the pride, of a pride of lion, that particular lion will try to kill the cubs of the females in that particular pride so that, he doesn't have any challenge. I want to raise his own cubs in the new pride. That is a behavior that has been established within lions. All right. Then also between lions and other predators, you can see that there is also competition. So they also kill, the babies of one another because they know that the more the other, all right. So let's say between the lion and a wolf, for example. So the more wolves you have in a particular territory, the less food the lion will have, and vice versa. All right. So so you have that competition also among predators. Okay, biotic and abiotic factors. So an ecosystem includes both biotic and abiotic. All right, so biotic simply means living. All right, abiotics means non-living. It's as simple as that. So biotic factors are living things. All right, plants, animal, fungi, bacteria. Each organism plays a particular role in the ecosystem. All right, without plants, we can't eat. Right, animals feed on plants, all right, and also, all right, fungi and bacteria they are also needed for decomposition of animals. Okay, so for example, earthworms play a key role in enriching the soil. They help us in breaking soil. All right, abiotic factors are non-living things such as moisture, okay, temperature, wind, sunlight, and soil. The balance of these factors determine which living things can survive in a particular environment. All right. Camels can survive in the desert. Horses cannot. All right. Why? All right. All the camels are, adapted. So, for example, they have pump in their back, which can store fat, we can store water. So they can live without water for a long period of time because of the way they are built. All right. So the balance of biotic and abiotic factors will determine the survival of an organism in a particular area. All right. So in the Caribbean Sea, for example, scientists found that coral reefs located near saltwater marshes have more fish than do reefs further out at sea. And why? The key biotic factor is the mangrove trees that live in the marshes. So the trees provide food and shelter for newly hatched fish, protecting them from predators. So fishes they want to breed, all right, in those coral reefs located near salt water, all right, because of the mangrove trees. And we provide shelters, provide protection, all right, and they can also get food, all right, maybe animals, all right, earthworms and things like that that are growing and living around those marshes. All right, so after the fish mature, they can now swim to the reefs. Abiotic factors that affect the growth of mangrove trees include low levels of oxygen in the mud where they grow and changing levels of salinity, that's salt, or saltiness due to daily tidal changes. So whether we realize it or not, these biotic and abiotic factors are all around us. I gave the example of mountains, all right? So people that are living on high grounds, of course, it means you have less oxygen. And if you notice, that's one of the reasons Kenyans, for example, are very good in marathon because they are living in high ice area, so they are already used to endurance. Right, they are used to low levels, operating, living, running, walking under using low levels of oxygen. So, of course, when you are doing marathon, you're using a lot of oxygen, and people tire out easily. But Kenyans, because of the high altitude area where they have grown up, they're already used to that kind of pressure, and that's why they do well in marathon. So, I'm using that as an example for us to see that, all right, whether we realize it or not, we are relating, we are adjusting, we are being affected, we are also affecting our immediate environment. So an ecosystem may look familiar from one year to the next with similar numbers of animals and plants. However, an ecosystem is always changing. All right, you may not notice the change. All right, for example, a long period of increased precipitation as rain might allow one plant species to grow better than others. All right, so if you have excessive rain, that excessive rain might slow down the growth of some species, might also accelerate the growth of another species. All right. So as the plant continues to grow, it may crowd out other plant species, changing the community's composition. Though the total number of plants in the community may remain the same, the species have changed. So one species have more or less killed off the other one. All right. I read a lot about what's happening in Florida, for example, in US. All right. So sometimes they have issues of pythons, all right, which have been introduced from outside, even outside America, all right, and those pythons, summer maybe pets, pets that are brought from outside the US, and the owner of the pets got tired, and they just go to Everglades and release them into the forest, all right, and go and check it. 15 years, 20 years down the line, those pythons must eat, all right? And what do they feed on? They feed on rodents, animals in the Everglades. And before you know it, the python population have exploded, while the local the local animal species are dying out. So in US now, there are some communities where they give hunters, all right, free license to go and kill, all right, those pythons, just to be able to balance out the ecosystem. Very important. So as the plant continues to grow, it may, okay, I've talked about that. So as these cyclic changes occur, an ecosystem falls into a balance which is known as approximate equilibrium. Approximate equilibrium. Okay. So that's the end of Unit 1. Unit 2, nature of our environment. So at the end of this unit, we should be able to know the etymological meaning of the term environment, know the importance of environment, and how it influences the animal's chances of survival. Number 3, what the term environment denotes. Okay. The term environment, which etymologically means surroundings, is considered as a composite term for the conditions in which organisms live, and thus consists of, air, availability of air, quality of air, availability of water, quality of water, all right, food, sunlight, which are the basic needs of all living beings, all right, and plant life to carry on their life functions. The environment also includes other living things like temperature, talking about that. So as you go around the world, temperature differs. All right, so you find places in the West, for example, where you have minus degrees, centigrade. So when you're having temperature falling to -4, -7, not even zero, all right. So in Africa, we don't, maybe on like maybe on maybe unless for places like South Africa, all right, you may not have that kind of experience, all right, to for temperature to drop down so low. There may be like Plateau State, in Nigeria, that I know temperature to could be very low, in Plateau States. All right. So wind, electricity. So in other words, the environment consists of both biotic living and abiotic factors, okay, non-living things. So environment creates favorable conditions for the existence and development of living organisms. Okay, so for a given organism, the environment includes all the surrounding physical and biological factors with which it interacts. The factor is any external force, substance, or condition that affects organisms in any way. All right. So if the temperature is too high, for example, right, you find people uh, having heat stroke, right? You can just start collapsing because the temperature is high, right? For example, uh, in the desert, for example, the temperature could be very acute. Uh, your water availability will not be easy. Okay, in such an environment. There are some lots of environment where it rains almost all year round. All right, maybe due to climatic changes. All right, I remember there was a year in Lagos that it rained virtually throughout the year. All right, uh, all these have ways of affecting us as human beings. So the environment is the sum total of everything that directly influences the animal's chances of survival and reproduction. Environment is a very broad concept. Okay, everything that affects an organism during its lifetime is collectively called its environment. So interactions with your own species, or interactions with other species, interaction with plants, interaction with microbes, seeing, even unseen microbes, all right? All these can affect the survival of the human race. Okay, so tutor mark assignments, you can look at this, give the etymological meaning of the term environment. I think I've done justice to that. Conditions that influence the living organism in the environment. I'll also talk about that. All right. The biotic factors, the abiotic factors. Then look at what are the durations of environment. Okay, so you may want to pause the video here and review what we discussed for you to be able to answer these questions. All right, correctly. Okay, so unit three is biogeochemical cycles. All right, biogeochemical cycles. So this is the process whereby matter such as water, carbon, nitrogen, and phosphorus will cycle within the ecosystem and through the atmosphere. So it's a complete cycle. All right. So for example, water cycle is very popular. All right. So you have the sun. All right. Uh, shining its rays upon oceans, upon streams, upon ponds, and of course, those water, the water is going to evaporate and become, gas, all right? And so it evaporates and go back to the atmosphere, all right? And after some time, the gas again condenses as rain back, and so the cycle continues, okay? The same thing with nitrogen, all right, phosphorus, and so on. So all living things depend on water. It's through the process of condensation, all right, gas becoming liquid, evaporation, liquid becoming gas, and precipitation, which is raining. All right, that water cycles through the atmosphere. It takes one water molecule about 4,000 years to make it through the cycle. The ecological cycle, also known as the water cycle, is a circular pathway of water on Earth from the atmosphere to the surface, below ground. Of course, there's water below ground, right? Aquifers. All right, so you have rocks, containing very pure water, all right, under the ground. Part of that pathway involves humans and other organisms, which all have bodies made mostly of water. Okay, so we look about geochemical cycles in details. We're going to look at the hydrologic cycle. We're going to look at schematic diagram or other cycle. We're able to explain the term ammonification. Okay, hydrologic cycle. Of course, hydro means water. All right, hydro means water. So hydrologic cycle. The hydrologic cycle, also known as the water cycle, is the circular pathway of water on Earth from the atmosphere, all right from the atmosphere to the surface, all right. Then some of them percolates to below ground and also back, So part of the pathway involves humans and other organisms, which all have bodies made mostly of water. All right, like our body, for example, is mostly made of water. Even the earth is over 70% water. Precipitation, such as rain or snow, falls to earth. Some of these precipitation seeps into the ground. Some drops into ponds, streams, lakes, other waterways, and some from puddles or other temporary pools. Depending on the type of soil and rocks surrounding it, also is on its location, groundwater may empty directly into oceans sometimes. So the water bodies globally, one way or the other, they are connected one way or the other. So sometimes water flow into lakes, swamps, wetlands, but these along with rivers, streams, and other freshwater sources also feed into the oceans. I just talk about that. So one way or the other, either are seeing the pathway or the surface, or sometimes the pathway is, hundreds of miles, below the ground, but that interconnection is there among all the water sources. So you can see the water cycle, all right? So you can see the sun, all right? You can see the sun um, evaporating the water, all right? So you have the sun eating up the water body and causing the water body to evaporate, and the gas, all right, then condense, all right? So condensation, and the condensation finally leads to precipitation in form of rain, in form of snow, all right? And the water goes back again into the water bodies, or it goes underground, and like that, and the cycle continues. So this is a very simplified uh, um, that schematic representation of the water cycle. So you can see the sun, you can see the water body, you can see evaporation, evaporated water condenses, and all right. Then through precipitation, rain and snow is released back to the earth, and the cycle continues into the foreseeable future. Great. Great. So that's about the water cycle. Then we talk about modification. Now, modification, of course, is from the word ammonia. All right. People that have done chemistry know what that means. All right. And a very key constituent of ammonia is nitrates or nitrogen. All right. So nitrates released by some bacteria are taken up by plants, which convert them into organic compounds such as amino acids and proteins. All right, I think granules are very good, right, in doing that. They are very, very relevant in the modification cycle. Nitrogen continues along the cycle as animals eat plants or animal matter. So when decomposers, all right, the microbes that decomposes dead um, animals, break down animal excretions or dead animal and plant matter, nitrogen is returned to the soil as ammonium in a process called ammonification. Okay, so denitrifying bacteria use nitrate as an oxygen source, releasing nitrogen gas into the atmosphere as a waste product. Some nitrogen also enters the soil as a result of atmospheric fixation by lightning. All right, so you can see how the cycle is. Some processes are releasing nitrogen. Some processes are eating up the nitrogen. So lightning energy break apart nitrogen molecules in the atmosphere. Nitrogen recombines with oxygen in the air, forming nitrogen oxide. All right, that's NO or NO2. The combination of nitrogen oxide with rainwater form nitrates, which are absorbed by the soil. Okay, great. Tutor mark assignment, draw a schematic diagram of water cycle. We have that. What is ammonification? We also may want to pause the video to go over the ammonification lecture again. Okay, so that's that. We'll move on to module 2, basic environmental concepts and theories. Okay, um, so we start with basic environmental concepts. At the end of this unit, you should be able to know definition of an ecosystem, characteristics of an ecosystem, factors forming the environment. Okay, theories of evolution. Interesting. John Baptist Dolomac was the first evolutionist to believe that organisms change over time. That's basically what evolution says. That organisms change over time. Using fossil records as a guide, Lamarck was able to develop three theories. One is the theory of need, which states that organisms change in response to their environment. All right, the ability to survive help them develop characteristics necessary for them to adapt in a given environment. All right, I think in one of the videos, I talk about the white bear, right? So if you go to US, you see uh, uh, that bears are brown, black, brown, black. But when you go to the Arctic region where you have ice, right? What you will see is the what they call the polar bears, and they are white. Why are they white? They are trying to blend with the environment, which is white, which is mostly ice, which will make them more difficult, all right, to detect when they are hunting. That's basically what the theory of need is talking about. Okay, so this one is a theory of use and disuse, all right, which according to Lamarck, organs not in use will disappear while organs in use will develop. Lamarck believed that giraffes before have short necks, but because of the need to survive and in order to reach tall trees for food, all right, they kept stretching their necks until these became longer and able to reach taller trees. These acquired characteristics were believed to be inherited by their offspring and propagated by the next generation of giraffes. Lama call it as the theory of acquired characteristics. So what that is saying is that your need determines the features that you are going to have as an animal. So you give the example of giraffe. Okay, so of course they are competing with other animals, all right, for grasses, for plants. And so when they have eaten up all the lower level uh, shrubs and grasses, they have to keep on stretching their neck for the ones that are higher up. And because of their stretching their neck, the neck kept growing longer and longer. Well, somehow. A lot of other scientists do not agree with that anyway. All right, for example, now if you change the color of your hair from black to blonde, which many youngsters are doing, do you think your child can inherit the blonde color of your hair? Okay, of course, we all know that it's not possible. A young lady keeps on using whitening soap and becomes fair. Can a child inherit or acquire fairness? So a lady is born black, all right, and over time preferred the light complexion, started using soap, all right, and became white or light in complexion. Will if she has a baby, will the change baby now become light because that is her new complexion? So these are the challenges that people have with that theory of use and disuse. So many scientists rejected the theories of Lamarck. They understood that if there were changes in cell or body structure, there could be changes in the genetic information of the species. Okay, so that's Lamarck theory. Then came Charles Darwin. So we have the Darwinian theory. So the more popular theory of evolution proposed by Charles Darwin based on natural selection is different from the theories of Lamarck. So according to Darwin, giraffe species originally had varying neck lengths. All right, but natural selection favored the survival of giraffes with longer necks that could feed on taller trees that were available. Giraffe with short necks simply died, it just died out. So that makes more sense, right? So you have some giraffes that their species they have a lower neck, and they have some giraffes that have longer neck. So when there is, of course, resources are limited, all right, and these species were in abundance. So at a time like that, when everybody have finished eating the grasses and shrubs that are easily reachable, the ones that doesn't have long neck, all right, are going to start dying out because they won't have food. So the ones that have a longer neck are the ones that are going to survive. That is basically what Charles Darwin is saying, which somehow makes more sense than what Lamarck said. All right, so 50 years after Lamarck's theory of use and disuse, Charles Darwin suggested the theory of natural selection after his voyage to the Galap Galapagos Island in HMS Beagle. All right, it makes sense. It makes sense. So he was fascinated by the diversity of organisms he found along the journey. So in Galapagos Island, he observed that finch species have different beak structures for different food types. So the abundance of certain fish species in an island was somehow related to the type of available food for these birds. So this is the theory of survival of the fittest. All right. So if you have the features to enable you to survive, you survive. If you don't have the features that will enable you to survive, that species die out. That's what Darwin is saying. So Darwin suggested that selection also takes place in nature. In selective breeding, a farmer identifies and selects the best and desirable trait to propagate, which is true. All right. So if you have cows or you have sheep, you want to breed them. You want to look for the ones that have the best feature to select for breeding. It makes sense. So in natural selection, environmental factors promote the survival of the fittest and eliminate the less fit. Organisms struggle for existence in order to survive. They compete for food and space. Organisms with favorable and advantageous characteristics survive and reproduce. Fitness refers to the ability of an organism to survive and produce offspring. Okay, so different individuals in the population possess different characteristics and abilities. This is called variation. All right. Variation among individuals in the population would likely bring greater chance of survival. An organism that is adapted and has structures fitted to survive in a given environment will likely produce offspring. Variation increases the chance of survival of living things. I give the example of those guys that are living on water, and because they live on water, over time, even their lungs have adapted for them to be able to survive, all right, in that particular environment. Okay, so organisms with the best and desirable traits will likely adapt to environmental changes and may gradually become better suited to survive in a given environment. We talk about the Arctic regions. People don't survive there. It now is a harsh place to live because of the highs, the winter, all right. But Eskimos are there, all right. That's where they were raised, that's where they were born, and they're living fine, enjoying their life, all right, in that region, all right. So, because of the traits they have. Okay, fine. So, total mark assignment, what is meant by the term evolution? State the theories of evolution. So, we talk about Lamarck theory, we talk about Charles Darwin's theories. So you may want to pause the video here and review what we have discussed so far on this. Okay, Unit 2 is microbial and parasite ecology. Here we'll be looking at insights and approaches of population ecology, community ecology, and evolutionary biology. We'll be looking at idea between biological organisms and their abiotic environment, especially at relatively large spatial scales. Great. So let's talk about population ecology. Population ecology is the study of populations, especially population abundance, and how they change over time. How they change over time. Okay, crucial to this study are the various interactions between the population and its resources. All right, so you have alarm bells being rang all over the world. Some species are dying out, usually of animals, usually animals. All right, elephants, they are killing them for their tusks. All right, crocodiles, alligators, are killing them for their skins. Lions are being hunted all over the world. Okay, so you have scientists, you have ecologists, right? Now trying to preserve certain species, all right, keeping them in sanctuary, all right, trying to engineer their reproduction so that they can renew that species. All right, so population is defined as a group of freely interbreeding individuals of the same species present in a specific geographical area at a given time. A population has traits of its own, which are different from those of the individuals forming the population. Okay, so we look at density, the number of individuals per unit area at a given time. All right, So this is very relevant, right? So you have a land space. How many Africans can you find there? How many Caucasians can you find there? All right. So in a particular state, how many lions are there in that state? All right. How many crocodile can you find? How many elephants can you find? That's what we mean by density. All right. So earth population density which may vary from time to time and place to place. For example, you may notice more plants and animal species in the garden during the monsoon season. So density of a particular organism in a region is determined by selecting random samples from an area of particular dimension called quadrats from that region. All right. Uh, in case of large mobile animals like tigers, leopards, lions, and deer, the density may be determined by counting individual animals directly or by the pock marks, that is the footprints left by the animals in a defined area. All right, now, in developed countries, they tag them now, all right, so they can just kind of sedate the animal and put electronic tag on them. So that's also one of the ways they are tracking these population density now. So population distribution is the pattern of dispersal of individuals within the area of interest, patterns of distribution. Okay, so what do you understand by the term ecology? Define the term density in respect to distribution of population. So those are the questions for the revision. You can pause the video and go over the lectures. All right. Okay, in the three food chain. So this is transfer of food from the plants, which are called producers, through a series of organisms which repeated eating and being eaten. All right, it's called a food chain. So it shows relationship between producers, the the plants which photosynthesize, then the consumers who feed on the plants, then the decomposers which feed on the consumers when they die out. So all living organisms must eat some type of food for survival. Plants make their own food through a process called photosynthesis. All right, we know that from biology. So using the energy from the sun, water, and carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and nutrients, they chemically make their own food. Since they make or produce their own food, they are called producers. All right, so plants are producers. Organisms which do not create their own food must eat either plants or animals, so they are called consumers. So, like human beings, for example, so some animals get their energy from eating plants, while other animals get energy indirectly from plants by eating other animals that already eat the plants. Interesting. Animals that eat only plants are called herbivores. All right. Only plants are called herbivores. All right, like elephants, for example, they are herbivores. Animals that eat both plants and other animals are called omnivores, all right, like pigs. Pigs are omnivores. Animals that eat only other animals are called carnivores, like lions. All right, some animals eat only dead or decaying materials and are called decomposers. All right, so so at the end of this unit, we will learn the difference between food chain and food web. Then we also look at it. So energy loss. So in a food chain, energy is lost in each step of the chain in two forms. First, by the organism producing it and doing work. So the organism is running, the organism is uh, moving around, and so energy is being lost. And second, by the food that is not completely digested or absorbed. Therefore, the food web depends on a constant supply of energy from producers and nutrients that are recycled by the decomposition of organisms. All right. So, as food is passed along the food chain, only about 10% of the energy is transferred to the next level. So, which means about 90% is lost. So, for example, 10% of the energy phytoplankton, all right, received from the sun can be used by zooplankton at the next level. From one level to the next, about 90% of the energy used by the previous level is lost. This means that there has to be a lot more organism at the lower level than at the upper levels. All right, so which means, for example, you need to have more plants, all right, to sustain the herbivores. If not, the herbivores are going to die out. Okay, which could happen in period of famine. So the number of organisms at E level makes a pyramid shape, and it's called a food pyramid. All right, a food pyramid. All right, so if you look at, okay, fine. So you have a food chain here. All right, you have a food chain. Okay, so you have the grass. All right, the grass can photosynthesize from the sun. All right, and you have grasshoppers. All right, feeding on the grass. You have frog feeding on the grasshoppers. You have snake feeding on the frog. You have the hawk feeding on the snake. And when the hawk dies, the fungi help to decompose. All right, the dead body of the hawk. And so the cycle continues like that. And that's what we call food chain. All right. Now, food web is where you have multiple food chains, interacting together, multiple food chains interacting together. So it's more complex, right? It's more complex. So, for example, now you have grass, all right, be eaten by the grasshopper eaten by the frog eaten by the snake, all right. But the snake can also eat rat, right? And the rat can also eat grasshoppers. The grasshoppers can also feed on grass. The rat can be eaten by a wolf. All right. So you can see it continues and continues like that. It continues like that. All right. Look at flowering plants. The flowering plants, butterfly can actually feed on the nectar of the flowering plants. All right. Frogs can eat the butterfly, all right, and so on. And hawk can pick up the frog. So it becomes so you are now having multiple food chains combined together to make up the food web. That is what we are saying here. So that's the difference between food chain and food web. Food web is simply a combination of multiple food chains. So this is the food pyramid we are talking about. So at the lowest level here, you have the producers, the plants, and you can see at the next level, you have the rabbits, you have the rodents basically feeding on the grasses. Then at the higher level, you have snakes feeding on these other ones. Then you have hawk. So you can see that as you grow up the pyramid, the numbers are reducing. Right, that's the only way the system can be sustained. So if you have more snakes than rodents, what is going to happen? The snakes are going to die out. All right, the snakes are going to die out. The rodents are going to die out. Okay, so this is the essence of the food pyramid. Okay, so I've talked about the differences between food chain and food web already. So food chain basically is a linear, arrangement of how one level depends on the other. The food web is a combination. Okay, you can see food web is made up of interconnected food chains, made up of interconnected food chain. Okay, so total mark assignment with a schematic diagram, define the term food and food chain and food web. Then briefly explain how energy is lost in food chain and food web. Okay.